Jim, that's a great story. I guess I find it hard to believe that you've been able to literally take mom's life and death negotiating techniques into your legal business. Isn't that a little bit extreme for corporate negotiations?
Yeah, well, I talked earlier about how you kind of do what clients need, and I'll give you an example of literally a life and death negotiation where I used a similar tactic. I had, again, a drug development company, and they were doing clinical trials, and the drug they were developing was for a disease for children, no cure for the children, no real method of treatment. Parents were stuck just kind of being caretakers and waiting for their kids to die. So they're doing the clinical trials. In the clinical trials, you do admit a certain number of people in. They have to meet FDA standards and the like. And my client did not have a lot of money and also did not know how to develop drugs. So they went to a drug contract manufacturer, and my client got its money up together and said, "Here, drug company, go and get us a batch that will be big enough of this drug to bring us through the clinical trials." And I think there were about 24 infants and young children in this trial. And so they paid their money, and several months later they get the delivery of drugs, and they promised everybody whose child was admitted to the drug that they could stay in the trial for the length of the trials because we had enough drug. Well, rumors start spreading in that community. As you can imagine, parents are very concerned, and as I would be if I had a child with that, and there's a possible cure, you want your kid in the clinical trial. The problems are that the FDA rules are very strict about who you can let in and who not, and we would run out of drug if we started admitting children. So after being told, my client telling several groups of parents no, he got a call from Senator Dick Durbin's office, the senior senator from Illinois, who was calling on behalf of his constituent. My client wanted nothing to do with dealing with Senator Durbin. So my client gets me to call up the senator's office, and strangely enough, they put me right through. I've never felt so important in my life. And Senator Durbin proceeds to start reaming me. "What do you mean this kid can't be in? And it's going to die, and and I'm going to the FDA, and this was why my client wanted me to be dealing with the phone call, not him." And I knew that the senator was in government official mode. There was nothing I was going to do except one thing. I said, "Okay, we'll admit your constituent's child into the clinical trial." And that kind of stopped him kind of ranting and raving. And basically I said, "But there's just one little thing. If you just do one little thing for me, we can make all this happen." And so he says, "Yeah, sure, what is it?" I said, "You have to pick the kid who gets kicked out." And he says,
There we go.
What do you mean?" I said, "Well, as we've told you a number of times, there really is only one, there's only the amount of drug for this number of kids, and if one comes in as you want, one has to go out. And I don't want to pick it, so you pick the kid." And so he started backing off and the like. And by the end of the conversation, he had stopped yelling at me. He never called my client again. And basically that is kind of an illustration of, one, the life and death scenario, but beyond that, it's an illustration of how you win negotiations, which is what my mother taught me beyond life and death, which is that the purpose of a negotiation is to change the other person's concept and view of what reality is. Yeah. We had a senator here who, as you know, in Washington, there's an infinite amount of money. There's an infinite amount of all kinds of things, and it's not within that person's worldview to kind of believe that something is finite. So what I decided very early on in his diatribe is that I had to convince him beyond anything that there really was a finite amount of this drug, and that if one person would benefit, then somebody else would not. And him being a reasonable person when he's not yelling and turning purple, he eventually came around to that. And I think that's a basic principle of negotiation, changing how people view the world. Because people go in thinking of themselves and their goals and their resources and the like, and you have to kind of make people kind of understand what is possible and what they can realistically get out of a situation.